To start things off, Andrea, what would you say is the most challenging aspects of entering different markets as a growing company like yourself?
The biggest challenge really comes into the different way of people asking for regulatory items. There are some different acronyms, etc. Fundamentally it's the same, but actually it's getting over the fear factor, because you sit there and go, okay, I've done all my due diligence, I've done all my planning, now I've got to really make it work. So the real challenge is making sure that the user, the player, gets served right and in the right context of what we're trying to achieve. And it's a key thing for us to really understand and get our user experience right. But we're here talking about online gambling. We also do online games, and we've split that out to be more in line with the gamer's language and the gambler's language. So yeah, you've got all your due diligence, you've got all your regulatory piece, you've got all of that side of it. But fundamentally, it's the player, it's the consumer, and we're doing more work on that. And we're very unique in the fact that we're quite a small element of the payments, and fundamentally we've got cash, and we've got these voucher purchases that people thought were dead. Absolutely not. We're growing at a phenomenal rate.
And also touching on that, there's a lot of a collaborative approach as well, entering these new markets. Can you just talk to us a bit more about, working with other partners to gain a better understanding of entering those regulatory compliance issues that may arise?
Yeah, so I've been very vocal about we as a payment company are no longer just regulated by the payments regulators. We also take our responsibility very, very seriously about the gambling regulators. And I want all payments companies to do what we're doing. Taking responsibility, if you're going to be in this arena, in this ecosystem, I owe it to the operator to be able to deliver what my product is. And we've had two amazing experiences recently with Ontario. Now we've got the ability for them to feel comfortable about what we do that allows us with the operator to say with their compliance department, we've done our research, we've got the okay, here's our okay. We did the same in the Netherlands. Some of our competitors have just walked away, and many of the payments companies sadly still say that's to do with the operators. We don't take that stance. I think we owe it in this industry to be part of the ecosystem to deal with it. So the collaboration for us is working with both regulators.
And so following on from that, Andrea, how close are we in terms of that collaboration in sharing data, and how can that be accessible through each partnership?
So we were always sharing data before, but now we've enhanced our product. So we have something called the KYC handshake. That behind the scenes in the API, we literally shake hands on the data with the operator. And equally, if we need to, with banks. We're not in the banking system. We're not on the MasterCard and Visa rail, so we've got our own information. But that KYC handshake is helping us within. In Europe, you call it social responsibility. Here in America, it's responsible gaming. And that is something that is so fundamental. So, for example, here in the US, when we launch, we will be taking the ability for a user to set their own limits. And in the background, inform the operator of that information. And then using that data responsibly, I mean, fundamentally we're European, so we work on a GDPR level always, is using that data to help, making sure you've got the AML, making sure we're dealing with regulatory and fraud, but actually fundamentally making sure the user has the best user experience. Not everybody's trying to do something wrong, so let them get through. So not everybody needs the same journey. So we're optimizing the journey as well.
How key do you believe flexibility is moving across these different markets in the US?
We're doing a lot more automation like everybody is, but the flexibility for us is knowing that it's different in one territory to another. We've been mainly in Europe, but we even know every single European country deals with something called the European Directive. We're an e-money institution, slightly differently. And working here in the US, working with and talking to the regulators here and talking to the operators, everything needs to be slightly different. So we need to be scalable on that. And flexibility means my team have to be. So I take the customer support or my operational support, their knowledge base and understanding how to be in the right place at the right time is fundamental. So a flexibility approach is actually about being aware, and that's not just me, the CEO, that's every single member of our team. There's nothing worse than entering in a market and saying, I know what I'm talking about, I've been in, and we're 20 years old next year. I'm going to celebrate that. But we don't sit back and go, I've been around 20 years so I know what I'm talking about. We don't do that. It's the wrong way to do it. And I encourage other payments companies to stop doing that.
Moving on to more regulatory trends, have you noticed any other new trends in the US in moving into this market?
Well, there's all the normal stuff to do with AML, but the most important thing that we're seeing is responsible gaming, both for the player and the operator's information and data. So that KYC handshake is more than just sharing IDs, it's sharing information around. But I really endorse it, and I do make a big vocal statement about where we thought we were going. We've taken our time here in the US, and we're looking at what needs to be brought in, and then that principle about taking responsibility and being accountable is listening to what is required. We agree with. It's how you deploy it that counts. But RG, responsible gambling, or social responsibility we'll call it in Europe, fundamental growth. It's the right way to do it, to bring this, develop the actual way of bringing that and sharing that data. But I do hope that regulators, especially back in Europe, start to think about a bit more flexible. Yeah, just putting strict rules in isn't necessarily going to make it right.
And finally, to wrap up, Andrea, could you let us into more insight in Neosurf's further expansions into the US for the next year?
Yeah, it's over a year ago that we announced that we were coming here. That year has been spent on a few due diligence things with the bank, and it's been going through product. But the reason we're here and sponsoring here with SBC is because we're ready to go. Now, ready to go in different markets. So there is the games as well as the sports. The sports betting and online gambling will take a little bit slow because onboarding does take a little bit longer. It's a different place, everything evolves. But what we have been doing is talking with the operators here for the gambling side. And I think our commitment to being the cash, which I believe is underserved in the US, the cash customer is underserved, but being able to do that in the safe, secure way and keeping the privacy in that, but making sure the operator has the confidence with their compliance and risk team that what we're doing is correct and giving them the right data, and so we are meeting all the requirements that are there, and that's important.